Hey guys, let's take a minute here and talk about something that's not something I want to be leaning up against. Sometimes sometimes you sit down and you're leaning on things that, well, that's just that's just being a shitty person right there. Um, so over the last, I don't know, few years, let's say the last 5 years, to give this kind of a rough time frame, there has been a huge push um, for the law enforcement community, members of the law enforcement community, to undergo what we'll call, for the sake of this discussion, mental health training. And I don't mean as it relates to our mental health as law enforcement professionals, but how to, I guess, recognize and deal with people that may be facing um, mental health challenges, whether that be some form of mental illness or whether it be some kind of manic or uh, episodic situation, uh, uh, PTSD or autism or something that would cause an individual to be out of sorts. And while I will always advocate for more training, I believe that you can't really ever have enough training. Um, I think we kind of have to be judicious about how this kind of training is implemented and what the expectations are once that training is completed. And I say all that to say this. As a uniformed patrol officer, especially as a uniformed patrol officer, and somebody who's out 8, 10, 12 hours a day shagging, calls for a vast majority of the time, and then when you get a little bit of downtime in between calls to go out and be proactive, well, then great, you get to do that. But it's safe to say a majority of the uniformed patrol officer's time is spent answering calls for service. In doing so, we're there to solve a problem. And we have to use what tools are available to us at that time. Now, in the event that you encounter someone, and oftentimes dispatch will put it into CAD and it'll pop up on your MDT, or maybe they'll put it out on the radio, hey, this person maybe is off his meds or off her meds, or known to have some bipolar issue or something. You might get a heads up on the way there. But when you arrive on scene and you put your boot on asphalt and you're going to deal with this situation, whatever this situation may be, are we in a position to diagnose a person? Are we in a position to say, oh, well, this individual may be suffering from X? I don't know if that's realistic. Now, don't get me wrong. I am a huge advocate of training. I really am. And I don't think you can ever have too much training. We train with our firearms, and we train driving, and we train with our legals every year or every 6 months or every quarter, whatever your requirements are. And there's always new and better things happening. And it's important to learn that stuff. And as it relates to mental health training, I'm open to whatever. I'm open to any kind of training that's going to allow us to better serve the community that we're supposed to be taking care of. But I think what has to be understood and what isn't talked about enough is that we don't have time. Time is not on our side. If you encounter a situation where a person is having some type of episode, and that is a contained situation, and you can call for the resources and wait for the resources, you can put into play what you've learned about mental illness and what you've learned about how to deal with these people. That's great. I know a lot of agencies are going to kind of a setup where they've got a specially trained individual that is on shift, or maybe it's somebody that rides with EMS, and they can come to whatever location the officer requests, and they can deal with that from a mental health professional standpoint. That's great, but that requires time. I would say 95%, and all the best statistics, like 90% of them are made up on the spot. But I would say 95% of the time, you don't have the time. You have an active situation. And if I step out of my car and I am faced with an imminent threat to a third party or to myself, I got to be quite frank. I don't care what the mental state, the mental health state is of that individual. If I step out of the car, if I walk into the house, if I walk around the corner, however I'm getting to where this problem is, this problem that I'm supposed to solve, and there's an imminent threat, if that person is armed, if they are actively physically engaged in combat with somebody, I think you'd be hard-pressed to expect anyone to come up with some diagnosis and then a way to properly deal with that individual according to whatever training or whatever recommendations have been made. I don't know that that's a realistic expectation. We have to solve the problem in the most efficient way that we can. We have to solve it quickly, and we have to solve it as permanently as we can. And in the instance that it's an aggressive situation or an armed situation, and I have to make a decision immediately on defending my community, a member of my community, or myself, does it really matter that that person is having a mental episode? And I don't mean for this to sound harsh, but I do mean for it to sound real, because that is the reality in which we live. If you're faced with an armed subject, your priority is A, making them not armed, or B, putting an end to the threat, whether it's a threat, again, to the community or whether it's a threat to me, you, the officer. I don't know that I'm going to say, hang on, ma'am, sir, I need you, instead of shooting at me, to hang on and allow me to get the proper mental health people here, and let's see if we can't talk through this. In a perfect world, hey, that's a great thing. And again, if time is on your side, if you have a contained situation where you can allow those resources to show up, by all means, let's do it, because nobody wants to hurt anybody and nobody wants to get hurt. But again, especially from a uniformed patrol standpoint, where time is not on our side and we have to make a decision right now and we have to solve a problem right now, and if we're dealing with a situation where somebody is armed or violent, we have to solve that the best way that we can, the most efficient way that we can, and that's not always the cleanest way, the prettiest way, the most sanitary way. Law enforcement's not a sanitary profession, and it's not, especially in this day and age, it's not Mayberry, it's not Barney Fife and Andy Griffith. It's right now. We've got to get this done. Are there situations where it is feasible to allow for that mental health professional or allow for that mental health training and recognize some things? Sure, absolutely there is. But in the heat of the moment, which most of our violent confrontations are, they occur within seconds. Is it realistic for anybody to believe that, we can find a way to solve this another way? we have to solve it right now. And I'm not advocating for, we have to be judicious in what we do. And we know that. But we can't expect that every situation is going to be clinical, because it isn't. It's not going to be clinical. And most situations, dare I say, a vast majority of situations, just aren't going to be that way. So, do I think that mental health training is valuable to an agency overall and valuable to the individual officers? Of course I do. Do I think that it's going to solve anything? I'm not optimistic. I'm not optimistic. And a part of me, the jaded, skeptical part of me, looks at a lot of these things that these agencies are doing and you know, bringing in these mental health professionals, getting the training and the classes. And again, that's all great, but what are we opening the door for now in doing that? In providing, and I'm not saying not to provide it, but in providing this training, and you know, a copper gets out on a call and he winds up having to shoot some kid or shoots, you know, an adult that, you know, the family comes back a day later and says, well, you know, he or she was autistic, or he or she had, you know, a bipolar disorder, or he or she, but we had to do what we had to do right then to solve the problem, to eliminate the threat, to keep somebody from getting hurt, to prevent this person from going out and hurting more people. Is the expectation now going to be, well, you've had this training and you didn't put it to use, so now we're opening ourselves up to more liability maybe? And I'm asking, I'm not telling. Or is this, in conjunction with that, is this a way for an agency to say, well, you know, Officer so-and-so or Deputy so-and-so had this training and they, you know, we can see right here on the body cam that he, you know, he didn't use it, or she didn't use it. And then who's left out to dry? And I only bring this up, I'm asking questions because I want you guys to think about this and give me your thoughts. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me where my thinking is flawed. But at the end of the day, I just don't see this being it's a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. And it seems like the mental health issues are going to continue to get worse. And we have to look not only internally at what we as law enforcement professionals can do to help curb some of these situations, but where does the family rely, or what is their responsibility in all of this? And you know, how many cases have you seen where, you know, this person got tased or pepper sprayed or batoned or beanbagged or shot, and the family does come back and say, oh, well, you know, he was mentally ill. Well, what the hell was he doing out on the street? What, you know, why was this person not either institutionalized or under some form of psychiatric care? You knew that this person had these problems, yet you left us to deal with it. And this is the result. This is the outcome, and now we're the bad guys. And I don't think that that's a reasonable. I don't think that's a reasonable thing. But again, I'm blabbering on. Give me your thoughts. Let me know where I'm wrong, or let me know where I'm right. I always like to be told that I'm right. It makes me feel good. I was wrong once, but it's only because I thought I was wrong, but I was really right. Anyway, doesn't matter. Comment. Let me know what you think, and we'll continue this discussion and many more.